Hello, and thank you all for tuning in today. Before we dive into our discussion, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. My name is Elisa Zanola, and I'm head of events for the Fashion Scholarship Fund. As we're all extremely familiar with Zoom at this point, we do want to mention some great features that we'd love for you to utilize today. One of them is the chat box. Feel free to send comments to the panelists as the discussion is happening. And then the other is the Q&A box. As questions come to mind, we encourage you to submit them and we'll answer as many as possible during that Q&A segment of the session. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Peter Arnold.
Thank you, Elisa, and welcome everybody to, it's hard to believe, the 9th week of our Summer Scholar Series. Summer's flying by. Tuesdays are our workforce preparedness sessions, and today's session is themed Lunch Break with the Bosses. I'm especially excited to have 3 powerhouse women boss industry leaders joining us today. I'd like to introduce Nada Devere, who is an FSF board member and the Chief Merchandising Officer at Macy's. Welcome, Nada. Nada is joined by Stacy Henderson, who's also an FSF board member and the U.S. head of e-commerce, digital, and consumer experience at Todd's Group. And also Amanda Smith, who isn't yet, but maybe one day will be an FSF board member, but is most impressively the president of Fairchild Media, where she oversees WWD, Footwear News, Sourcing Journal, and Beauty Inc. Welcome to the 3 of you. I'm going to just jump right in. Super excited to be speaking with you, and you each have a kind of a different expertise, very deep one. We've got an audience, as you know, of scholars and young professionals pursuing a variety of different disciplines and career paths, so I know they're very eager to hear from you and your perspectives on things. So maybe I introduced you and mentioned your titles. If we could just talk to the kids about what that means. What does it mean, Amanda, to be the president at Fairchild?
That's a great question. Well, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and really appreciate you having me join. So yeah, the president of Fairchild, it's quite a title and a list of brands to oversee, but it basically means I oversee the business of the title. So I oversee sales, marketing, events, our content studio, e-commerce, and all of the design and all of the teams that roll into that, which sounds like a big job, but I got my start in the sales space and kind of worked my way up. My first job was selling classified ads at a magazine, and in essence, running the business is always a sales job.
Nice. Chief Merchandising Officer at Macy's, Nada. What is that scope, dare I ask?
Yeah, no, well, first, thanks for having me, Peter, and hello to all the students. Excited to be here. You know, being the Chief Merchandising Officer at Macy's is just a great job. I would say it's something that really inspires me every day, and that's really driven by the team and the partners that we work with. But what I'm responsible for is really the vision of merchandising for Macy's. So the products that we're going to sell to our customers and the experiences we're going to create. I work with our partners to really identify who is that customer we want to go after, and then building product strategies to help us go and get that customer as an acquisition or to retain them. A lot of what I oversee in my team is I oversee both the full price and the off price product assortment that we have. I have teams of buyers that buy all categories, from toys to underwear to suits and dresses, so lots of fun categories. And I also have assortment teams. They build out, the financial plan in which we're going to buy to. So really making sure that we're going to have metrics that we can all, build assortment plans for. I have a fashion office that really works on forecasting and helping identify the trends that we're going to create products to support. And then I also have a private label team that really builds out the DNA of our brands and designs products for those private labels. So we work, with our own vendors internally to source product, but then we also work with many partners and great brands to deliver for our customers. So, I've been working at Macy's for 16 years, my whole career, and it's just been such a delight to be in this role. I started 4 months ago, but it's really exciting, with all the experience I have to now really work with so many partners to evolve the experience at Macy's.
Thanks, Nada. So Stacy, U.S. head of e-commerce, digital, and consumer experience. What does that role entail for you?
Hi, everybody. I'll echo Nada and Amanda. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. It's been awesome. And thank you, Peter and Alyssa, for asking me. to sit in today. So I oversee the US e-commerce. I also oversee, of course, the digital and also the marketing. And that basically means from an e-commerce point of view, looking at the business, trying to grow the business, and that's from A to Z. So it's everything to how we get customers to our site, how we optimize our site. Is the site working? Is it not working? How do we make it work faster? How do we make you check out faster? Are the right products on the site, the inventory, logistics, all the way to customer service? I oversee that piece of it. And then recently, which was early this year, branding and marketing was also added to my plate, which is super exciting. So I also have the opportunity to develop the brand marketing strategy for the US and any consumer experience. So if you go to our store, what you see when you get there, all the way to inviting you to our store and making sure that experience is perfect, or as perfect as it can be, let's say. And just to clarify, and just for if you students don't know, or in the alumni, Todd's group, we have 3 different brands. I oversee Todd's, T-O-D.S, not Tom's, Todd's. I also oversee Roger Vivier, which is a French brand, and also Hogan, which is an Italian brand that is a bit more leisure sneaker-like.
Got it. Thanks, Stacey. I'm going to take the 3 of you back to the earlier stages of your careers. Think back maybe to when you were in the same place that most of our scholars and certainly our young alums who just graduated and just entered the workforce are. Just tell us a little bit about your journeys after college, how you got your first job, and maybe even when you knew or thought you wanted to work in this industry. Nada, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's in my blood a bit. You know, my grandfather, when he emigrated from Hungary, started a leather factory here in America. And, you know, when I was a kid, like 6, I used to sit on the cutting tables and watch the pattern makers make leather jackets. And they made leather jackets for like motorcycle guys that were like tough and tattooed. And I just thought it was so interesting. And so my mom always was like, you do not want to be in this industry, like it's not for you. And I was always very curious around it. And I think it's because it was, hard, and it was their own business and there was a lot that went into it. But I was so excited about, that connection they had with the customer and watching product really evolve all the way from materials to something you could wear. I think what then happened is I did a lot of internships, and I think internships are always really helpful to kind of satisfy some curiosity. So I did an internship at CNN. I thought I really wanted to be in public relations. I did not want to do that, definitely not in news, but I learned a ton in terms of, how to really operate in a corporate culture. And then I interned at Gucci for 2 years, where I learned a lot about their digital business. They had just started a website, and I used to actually run downstairs and get the product from the store and like put it in a box and ship it to customers. And I was so interested of how, customers shopped online and where people were buying certain things. And I would keep track of all those things manually. It sounds like I'm 100, but like manually when I used to do that. And then, I was on the path to go to law school, but I just wasn't ready to do that when I was a senior. And so I actually applied to the training program at Macy's. I was inspired by a family friend that worked at Macy's. We have a great training program, and it got me into retail. I think I was always a shopper, and I was always obsessed with watching customers. I was always curious around how people reacted to product and their kind of interaction with product. So I never thought I would be in this job. I always thought this was temporary. And, 16 years later, I'm just, every day driven by the opportunity I've had. So a little bit of my blood, but I've learned a lot through the internships. And I think that really helps me understand what I like and what I don't like.
Nice. Well, as someone who did go to law school, I think you might have made the right choice, Nada. Stacey, what about you in terms of how you landed that first job and when you thought this was where you wanted to go?
I never remember a time when I didn't want to be in fashion. So that's hard. It was never a moment. I mean, it was definitely in my blood from the very beginning. I wish I could do a slideshow of me when I was 3 or 4 years old in my pink sparkly shoes, and things like that. So, but I'm from Kansas City. I'm a small town Midwestern girl, also incredibly shy. So the internship, the fashion world for me seemed like going to the moon. It was so abstract and bizarre. It was, you would get the magazines. My mother would get the magazines, and It was like it was so bizarre to me. So my first job out of college, but I loved marketing. I loved people, not unlike you. I love that, like what makes people purchase. I love watching people. I love the transactional part of commerce and what drives them to do that. In high school, I took a marketing course when I was, I think in the 9th grade. And I'm like, this is it. I want to do marketing. I love it, you know? And my first job out of college was with an ad agency. And afterwards, the ad agency I went to work for one of the clients. Actually, we made notebooks with companies, like we licensed notebooks for like Barbie and Looney Tunes and all that. And so my job, I spent so much time in Walmart and Target and looking at people buy notebooks. And that's how I was trained originally. And then later, of course, I really wanted to go into fashion. So I made a little turn there, which we can talk about later, but that came later in my career.
Nice. Thanks for that, Stacy. Amanda, what about you in terms of how you, just college and your thoughts of the industry and how you got that first position?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm a Midwest girl like you, Stacy. I grew up in Minnesota, and I loved the transformation from fashion and the personal expression and the art of it. And it really, a job or a career in fashion wasn't really available to me. And so as I looked around, I loved the magazines and sort of going through the pages and experiencing the photo shoots and the product and the dream behind it. And so after college, I went to Drake in Des Moines, and I went to Madison, Wisconsin. I had done a series of internships for city magazines, and I was hired by Minneapolis St. Paul magazine for my first gig, and I had been there, sort of many-year intern, and worked really hard to get there. And so my first gig was selling ads with the team, and it was a really, really good experience for me. It kind of got me into the first stages of the industry and kind of learning more and more about client services, how to help people in the office, learning about how companies function, and those are huge learnings for me, and took them throughout my career.
Nice. Amanda, were there some moments along the way, defining moments or inflection points, and were there mentors that you can remember that just made a difference in your path?
There really were. I have to say, like, some defining moments for me, I loved my first job so much. I loved everyone I worked with. I felt like I learned so much from everyone at the brand. And, it was my first job, and they would say to me, stay here and you'll be, publisher one day. And I loved that concept. And I woke up one day and I realized if I didn't move to New York, that was going to be the only job I ever had. And so I quit my job and I left and I moved to New York, and I really didn't know anybody. And I got a job on, this will date me, on Media Bistro at like a tech magazine. And then I was, selling ads, and it was kind of a big defining moment for me. I had a lot to learn. It was a bold move. I certainly, my family was like, you'll definitely fail and be right back to Minnesota. And there were definitely people along the way who helped me. I mean, certainly throughout my career, there are various bosses, there are coworkers who have helped mentor me. There have been, people within the industry who are clients of mine, but, advice they give you, kind of thoughtful help, networking opportunities. I think I've felt really fortunate to have a lot of people throughout the years who do that. And, in turn, I want to think about like how I can do that for someone else as well, right? Like, how can I help guide someone's career or connect into someone that'll make a difference in their life? And I've been fortunate to have that. I'll give you an example. Sorry to go on and on, but when I worked at Vogue, when I worked at the Wall Street Journal, I had a client, Emily Rubenfeld, who's now the president of Carolina Herrera, who met me, and she said, you know what? You belong at Vogue, and I'm going to help you get there. And I was like, oh my God, that's the dream job. That's the only thing I want to do. And she introduced me to the publisher, and I was hired there, and a huge difference in my career. And I'll tell you that every single time I get a new job, I think about Emily, and that one introduction made such a difference in the trajectory of my own career. And that was something she did. And so I always tell her I think about it, and I thank her every time.
Nice. Nice. That's lovely. Thanks, Amanda, for that. Stacey, what about you in terms of defining moments or milestones and equally important, mentors that you can cite?
Yeah, so I think for me it goes both ways. So defining moments. One, I have to say, I did my master's degree in Milan and was hired by Ferragamo, and I worked in Florence. I was so lucky to work in the corporate headquarters there in Florence. And just for everyone here, my master's degree was from a school called Bocconi, and it was an MBA with a specialization in luxury fashion. And for me, if I was going to study fashion, because this was when I was moving over, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to leave, Midwest, and I thought, I wanted to study in Milan, and that was simply based on, quite frankly, what I heard growing up in the 90s with Biggie and Tupac, and they all talked about Versace and Gucci, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to Milan. That's where I have to go, to Italy, to study, right? And so I was in the first thing was Ferragamo hired me immediately after my MBA, my master's program. The second thing was it's interesting, Amanda, what you said, because you can meet someone and the way they change your career just by introductions is incredible. So I met by chance a person who was not yet the president of Versace in the US. In fact, when I met him, we had a conversation. He was in business. I think at the time he was with Fendi, I can't remember. And I said to him, my aspiration was to become a CEO one day. So he was like, oh, that's interesting. Well, he moved and became the president of Versace US. But before that, I had already sent him a book on how to become a CEO, because that's what I do. And long story short, I have to say the defining moment of my career was he called me. I was at Florence, but I was looking to move back to the US. I was out of the US for 7 years. He called me and said, I have a job. I need someone to help me at Versace to get people in the door. I want you to help me. We're going after a new client. And I said, okay, when do I interview? He said, you just did it. Can you be here in a few weeks? I went a little bit later, and I have to say I was there for 8 years, and it was one of the best moments in my career. And in terms of mentorship overall, the reason why it was the best one, his name is Roberto. I've known him for years. He's actually my boss at Tots now. He brought me over a little while ago. But he was defining in my career. Beth Ann, when I worked at Westfield, I worked for the World Trade Center to launch that. Beth Ann Kamenko is phenomenal. I can call her at any time. I told her, even when I'm 65 years old, I'll be calling you for advice, and I hope you pick up the phone and answer. And she's always there and amazing. And then Isabel Harvey Watt was also, she was at Versace as well, and she hired me. But so I'll end this before we give it to Nada, but also I have to say, I get my energy on my teams and people that also support me. So they teach me more than I teach them. So, I have to say I always rely on the people I worked with, mostly Versace, the Kingsleys, the Danas, because they give it to me straight, and they can, we have a relationship now, even when we first started working. And I have to say, to this day, even when people reach out to me for whatever reason, it's usually from someone who I worked with that was on my team.
Love it. Thanks for that, Stacey. Nada, you're not from the Midwest, but I'm sure you have your own defining moments.
No, I'm a New York City girl. I think that, very much like Stacey mentioned, being shy, one of the things that when I was young, I never really felt like I could ask for something that, wasn't already given to me, or I never thought that I could kind of break the rules or do anything like that. But I had a sister that was a major rule breaker, still is. And I remember I was a junior in Syracuse, and I was looking through all the jobs that were available for internships, and none of them were what I wanted. And so she went to NYU. So I went on her website, which is probably breaking the rules. And I was like, oh, you have all these great internships. And one of them was for Gucci. And I said, well, I really want to apply, but it's, not my school. And so she helped me. And my letter at that time, because I had no experience, was like, I really just love the brand. And let me tell you why I love the brand. And let me tell you all the things that I can do for you, from getting coffee to all the other things. And it worked for whatever reason. And so that was, the first time that I felt like I got out of my comfort zone. It's still hard for me to break the rules and to do things like that. But another, defining opportunity for me was when I started at Macy's, one of the great mentors that I had for many, early parts of my career, I would bring this report to him every Monday at like 7 a.m. because that was the kind of stuff we used to do. And he's like, "Are you going to drop it off or say something?" And every time I would just drop it off and put it in the mailbox and never say anything and run away. And he's like, "Well, can you what do you see on this report?" And so then, that curiosity was there in me, but I never felt like I could say anything about it, or I never felt like I had permission. And so I think that first lesson of you don't always need permission, and people, would value what your perspective is. Later on, fast forward probably, 8 years or so, I was just unhappy in one of the roles I was in. And I went to my boss and I said, "I need to go to an area where I get more exposure to leaders. I want to be a leader. And if I don't have exposure, I'll never be able to get there and learn the things that I need." And so I think asking sometimes is important, and sometimes being patient is important. It depends on where you are in your career. But I asked to move, and I moved, and I got this great role. And then the last thing I'll say that he helped me with, this great mentor, was I was a VP at the time, and we were at this session where we were talking about the digital age and mentorships, and how us VPs needed to stay connected to all the new technologies that were happening. And it was just when Snapchat started. And one of the things that the speaker said was, you should always have a reverse mentor, somebody who can really teach you the things that you might not know about. And at the time I was probably 27 or 28. And my mentor at the time said, "Go up to our now CEO," but he was the president at the time, "and say you want to be his reverse mentor." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm never going to do that. That's so uncomfortable. That's outside my comfort zone." But I did it. And, the next week I was showing Jeff Snapchat, and I was like, "This is what, Snapchat is. This is how you use Instagram," all the different things. And it turned into this great opportunity where I got to meet with him all the time, and showing, the reverse mentor fun stuff eventually turned into me sharing business ideas and plans and business ideas to take us forward, and how I develop teams to, he's my boss now. And so I joke about, how important it is to get outside your comfort zone. But really, I think everybody spoke about this. It's those people that shepherd you throughout your career, and those relationships that you build that can take you into all kinds of places that are comfortable and sometimes uncomfortable. But don't be afraid to ask, and don't feel like you always need permission. I think that was the lesson that, I learned early on.
Thanks for that, Nada. No, thematically, this notion of having a mentor, we're all about mentoring, as you know, and we assign mentors, but sometimes our scholars are reluctant or a little bit inhibited about the dynamic. And I think, by your example, going out of your comfort zone and asking or seeking or, suggesting that they help you is the way forward, it sounds like. So thanks for that. A little bit of questioning about your companies. Amanda, I'm going to start with you. You've held leadership roles at many media brands: Fast Company, Vogue, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and Condé Nast Traveler. How did Fairchild and maybe the media world in general adapt and shift this past year? And are you implementing new ways of working, approaching business that will remain in place moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the start of the pandemic, I was the publisher of Fast Company. And for those of you who don't know, Fast Company is a kind of niche brand known for covering the beat of innovation. And it really is covering innovation at every kind of type of company. And that brand really believed in the future of work, using collaborative tools. And there we were able to pivot quickly. We moved right into a virtual space. We adopted the work from home kind of flawlessly. And in a really comfortable way. I joined Fairchild just after Labor Day last year, so just under a year here. And Fairchild hadn't really pivoted in the way that they needed to at that point. And so when I got here, we spent a lot of time, getting our webinars up to speed, our virtual events to a bigger place. And then we've made a lot of changes in the structure of how we communicate with our audiences. So we're relaunching our website. We are kind of rethinking how we do live and virtual events moving forward, because we've had such great experience getting both speakers and attendees from across the world to be part of this conversation and dialogue, which has been a great learning for us. We're also launching a podcast and revamping our beloved digital daily product into a truly digital product. So it gave us the chance to be more nimble. And what I wanted for the team is to think about ways we could be disruptive with the work that we do, very creative, and rethink our products, and kind of continue with that spirit. And so what I hope coming out of this will be, we have more ways to engage with the audiences, but we look at ideas and moments as an opportunity and think very much out of the box and think about new ways we can do things and how to answer for challenges that come to us. And so I think we will continue that, and I'm really excited about it. And I've been really proud of the teams and all the work they've done.
Nice. Not similar question. You mentioned you began at Macy's in the executive trainee program. Since then, you've had various leadership roles at Macy's, including experiences in men's, beauty, shoes, jewelry, food, and licensed goods. It's giving you a broad understanding of the retail landscape. How do you feel the retail experience at Macy's is shifting and adapting in response to COVID? And how are the items that shoppers want that you're buying for them? How are they changing as the world is reopened?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pandemic kind of put a heightened focus on really delivering a great seamless experience for our customers. Our customers always expected, a lot of, opportunities to shop with us differently, whether that was buy online and pick up in store or curbside pickup or quick delivery and all those different things, but they weren't all things that we were doing perfectly. And I would say we very quickly had to expedite the work to get that done. And so I think that was one of the first things was how do we make it easier for our customers to shop with us? And so now we have all these new ways for our customers to shop with us. And I would say now that it's been a bit over a year, we're going back and refining some of them. We launched them really quickly and making sure that they're the right experience. So I think it's giving our customers new ways to interact with us. We're also seeing that this new customer that we've acquired over the last year shopping online that never shopped with us before. And so part of that was, customers looking for items that we had and we had them in stock. And so that was part of the early days of the pandemic is like, who actually has the things that I'm looking for? And so we were introduced to a lot of new customers. And so now retaining those customers is a big part of what we've been focusing on. I think the piece that I'm so excited about from a lesson of the pandemic and how it's impacting the mix of business and what we sell is we're kind of doing what merchants always did, but doing like kind of a renewed focus on it, staying much closer to the customer, using last year, but not as a benchmark, because obviously the customers, dynamics are changing, the way that they're shopping, the way that they're dressing. All of us are dressing differently and where we live and all those things have changed. So it can't be just looking at last year. It's staying more in the moment, but also predicting. One of the lessons, because I was running our beauty business right when the pandemic started, and I was like, why didn't I think of this? But like, you couldn't get your hair done or your nails done or your hair colored. And I was like, we don't have hair color on Macy's.com. How can I get hair color on Macy's.com? And we weren't fast enough to be able to get it. But it's being in the moment where you're studying what customers are doing and then predicting the behaviors that will happen based off of the shift in the customer trend. So today, we're very much focused on having broader category mixes so that we can be more prepared. We're trying to inspire customers to, dress differently as they return to work, return to school, all the things that are happening. I think they're looking for inspiration as well. So, I think the biggest lesson has been staying close. And I think that, being there for however our customers want to shop, in store or online, has been really, important for us. And I'm excited about the new customer that we've got. And I'm really excited about the new brands and the new products we're introducing to this customer too. So it's really taught us a lot of good lessons. And as Amanda said, we've all had to work differently through this too. And I think the thing that we've been seeing is everyone's working virtually. And so we're not able to touch and feel product the way that we have been. And so we're also getting creative around how we bring this product to life for our customers. And so I think it's teaching us a lot in terms of how we do business, but also putting ourselves in the shoes of our customers and how they experience product as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Nada. Stacey, kind of similar question, but you've got maybe a slightly different perspective. Your career is rooted in the luxury market, Versace, Ferragamo, Tod's. How are luxury brands adapting? And as the digital marketing and e-com expert, how do you keep customers connected to the brand as in-store shopping is returning?
Yeah, so I've always been huge into, I guess orchestrating both off and online. So for me, even before, I guess the word omnichannel was a word, let's say, or was a term, that for me was always my focus, because I truly believe that, customers, they don't really think that way. They just see a brand name and they expect something when they go there, no matter where it is. They expect something when they see the communication. They expect a certain level when they see something online and in store, and the in-store experience. It has to almost be the same. Now, executing and making it feel the same, especially when it's digital, it's very hard. It's difficult, right? It's difficult to have an online experience match it exactly as it is in store. But we've done things to sort of, let's say, bridge that gap, as we've always talked about. The first thing that we did, or a couple of things we did, especially during the pandemic, and I'm speaking for Todd's group, I can't speak for all luxury brands, but one thing that we did is that we allowed when you go to a website and there's a chat for you to chat with people for customer service. In the past, that went to our customer service team that mostly handled logistics. Where's my package? I can't find my delivery. The typical customer service logistics issues. Well, what we started to do was now we worked with a company to where the chat goes directly to a store associate in the store. And that really helped us tremendously. One, because, the store associates genuinely wanted to be connected with clients, right? So that helped us out tremendously with that. And in terms of bridging that gap, they were also able to video chat if they wanted to. Not many people wanted to, which we learned. That was our big revelation. We were like, everybody's going to want to get on and just start, showing themselves and whatever. That didn't happen. But what did happen was that the expertise from the sales associate, right? And that real-time interaction, co-browsing the website was very helpful. So I think that's the one thing. But I think overall for luxury, what I've noticed is that versus I think 5 or 10 years ago, there's been a much bigger emphasis on the customer experience. There was a time, in my opinion, when it was about the designer, and it's still, of course, about the designer. But I think we're at a point now where we are really paying very close attention to consumer behaviors and also trying to predict, as Nada said, as things happen. And it's not just about we're pushing things to you and this is what my dream was. It's more of a two-way street. And we're finding that to be the case. The last thing I will say from a luxury point of view, and I don't think this was the pandemic, but I think we've seen it happen, is that I think luxury has understood there's not one cookie cutter luxury client. There are lots. It was at first, back in the day, it was the luxury client and the accessible luxury client. And I think now people see that the luxury client comes in all different colors and shades and from socioeconomic backgrounds to be able to actually contribute to that bottom line.
Interesting. Guys, I'm going to shift a little bit to how the fashion industry is, at long last, perhaps becoming more diverse and inclusive in efforts it's undertaking. Amanda, you very generously put together a diversity conclave, and we were a part of that. Stacey was actually FSF rep. Nada is the new chairwoman of our equity committee. But I want to talk maybe about your companies and about what they're doing to create more equitable workplaces. But I'd love to hear, in terms of just contextualizing this from you guys, about what have your personal professional experiences been like as women in the industry and what you might have encountered along the way. So that's a kind of two-part question, but I thought would add to the answer. Amanda, I'm going to start with you.
It's a great question, and something that we're talking about really constantly. I'll start with the sort of experience portion of the question. Growing up in the industry, there weren't that many female leaders. I'm probably the first female leader on the business side at WWD, which is a really big deal to me. And I have felt over the years, I'm a mom, I have young kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. But over the last several years, I've heard a lot of the like, oh, she's a mom, or kind of throwing out that a woman wouldn't want to be in the workplace or wouldn't be quite right for a job because she's a mom, and it's disheartening to hear. And then this year, we saw so many females leave the workplace to care for family members, to care for their children because they felt they had to. And so it became this really pivotal year for women. But kind of bigger than that, right? It's not just about women, it's about diversity and equity and inclusion everywhere in the workplace. And I feel like it was a big year for us to understand what had to be done in the industry and what had to change. And it's, everyone and everywhere has to think differently. At our corporate company, PMC or Penske Media, we have a deep commitment in diversity. They've launched corporate committees. Our newsroom has done training, kind of how to report on, when someone's what do you call a specifically gendered person? What are the pronouns? How do you talk about it? And we've done a significant amount of coverage behind that. We launched, as you mentioned, the Fairchild Media Diversity Forum this spring to have some tough conversations about, the industries and what's being done. And I think that's something that has to be carried not only in that moment, but in probably everything that we do, whether it's a CEO council for apparel and retail, a conversation or gathering of beauty executives. That's part of every dialogue for us to do better. On the business side, Fairchild's growing and we're hiring a ton of new people, and it's key that we hire a diverse group of people to be part of the Fairchild group. So we're really actively recruiting and looking for people to join and wanting to create opportunities and at every level. So it's a lot to think about and to do, and I think it's on all of us to do that. But it's also such a big opportunity to bring more people into the industries and the work that we're doing. So it's also exciting.
That's exciting to hear, man. Thanks for that. Stacey, maybe over to you about what it's been like to be a woman, a Black woman in this industry, and then maybe contextualize it in the sense of Todd's group and the conversation about equity.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I started my fashion career in Italy, and I was known as like l'Americana, or like the La Donna di Colore, the woman of color, or and I have to say, I had the opportunity, of course, to work in other industries, right? Pre my fashion career and then afterwards. For me, I feel like this environment, this industry, it's me, it is me. And what do I mean by that? I feel like for the 3 brands I've worked for, I can come as myself. I can be myself. I don't feel like I have to wither away as I'm a woman. I will say other industries, I did not feel like that. So overall for me in the fashion industry, as a woman, as a Black woman especially, I've seen, and for me and my personality, this is like an industry that I feel I thrive in. Now, what do I want to see? And what sometimes make me go, I need to see more female CEOs leading fashion houses. Like, I'm blown away. I need to see a program that can really get these amazing women that are in their VP or C-suite I need to see some female CEOs. I want to see fashion houses, these huge fashion houses, have some female CEOs, and I'm dying to see a female CEO of color. That's what I'm dying to see. And as comfortable as I am now, for me, I want to see this progression happen in our industry. And for me, I have to say, I always hear people say things like, there's not enough, or we can't find it. I think it's time to start creating those pipelines. Went a little bit off tangent, but that's what I want to see in the industry, and that's where I think the opportunity is. Well,
as an organization engaged in pipeline work, I'm happy to hear that, Stacey. I'm so happy that you're with us doing that. Nada, what about you from your vantage point and your experience?
Yeah, and I just want to comment on what Stacey just said, because I think that's so important. It's not about, now let's go find this secret talent that nobody ever knew. We have to develop. And I think that's part of what I'm so proud of the FSF is how do we start early in people's careers so that we can be the people that can really help develop our future leaders that are going to change the makeup of our leadership and what everybody looks like. And I think that's the role I think that FSF plays, but all of us play as leaders and mentors and part of what we need to do. I think, I'm very fortunate that at Macy's, there are a lot of women leaders, but to Stacey's point, there were not always a lot of women leaders in the C-suite. And so I think that we've had a couple, 1 or 2, and we were really proud of what that is. And honestly, when I stepped into this role, I didn't even realize that my predecessor was a woman. She was the first chief merchant that was a woman, which is crazy when you think about what the role entails and product and customer and all of those things and who our customer actually is. So I'm very proud to hold this role. I'm very proud of, when I look at the leadership of my team and how many women we have and how diverse our team is starting to become. One of the things that I also do is I sit on our Women at Macy's employee resource group. I'm the sponsor of it. And I think that part of what I realize is there's also just a tremendous amount of advice, and people need a sounding board and they want inspiration and they want to hear from us. And I think that's part of the role that I play. And, Amanda talked about being a mother, and I think I have so many people on my team that are mothers. I'm not a mother, but I think there's also this piece that says, I'm a mother, so I can't, or I'm a mother and I have this perception. But then it's also, I'm single. And so people think that I can work all day. And sometimes I want to take a break and do something. And, people are people and they all have individual things that they want to focus on. And being there to listen and coach and to inspire is part of what I hope to do and to continue to pay forward. One of the reasons why I've stayed at Macy's for so long is because of the culture of the organization. I feel like I can bring myself to work, and I do hope that many people can as well. And so D&I has always been an important part of the fabric of our culture, but I think now it's more about embedding it to how we think, not only internally, but externally too. And so, one of the things that we did 10 years ago, we just celebrated the 10-year anniversary, was the workshop at Macy's, where we, bring on, founders and creators and help them develop their business and help them connect to banks and help them learn about how to start their own business, all the way from creating product to EDIing it to a big seller, and how do you kind of deal with the process around it. And that takes a lot of work. And so I'm really proud that our organization has done that. We're now doing a lot more in terms of collaborations. We just launched our Icons of Style earlier this year, which was 5 Black designers that collaborated with our private brands. But the piece is that, we also took the 15% pledge, also really important. But what we have to balance is not a race to just add as many diverse owned brands as we can, or Black owned brands. I really want to make sure that we're developing them into the future great big brands. And I think that's going to be the difference of what happens in our industry. Is it's not a race to find more brands and just have, we just launched 100 new brands, but can we find the next best 5? And can we really grow them to be the future, biggest brands and iconic brands that we think of? And so I think of that as the role that I can play and that my team can play. And I'm really excited to see how this conversation now being brought up front in this industry and how it lasts. And I think it will last. I think that we are really committed to making a change in the industry. And I'm excited about what that means internally from a talent perspective, but also from a design and a fashion perspective too.
Thanks, Nat. I'm gratified that it seems like the three of you work at places where you can bring yourself to work and be yourself. That's encouraging. And also I'm gratified to hear that I think we all are committed to this cause of D&I, but the work has to be put in, on the front end of the pipeline, if you will, to get to that end point. And that's what we're all engaged in. So, I find that very gratifying. I don't want to bring this conversation down, but my next question is really about, have there been any moments, and maybe I'll take you all off mute in the interest of time and getting to the rest of the questions, any moments of adversity that led to your success, anything that happened to you that wasn't great? We've talked about your successes, but we had Tom Brown on last week, and he was talking about going bankrupt. And he was saying that in fact was probably the best thing that ever happened to him, in the sense of it underscored for him that he loved what he did and he believed in his aesthetic. Any moments the three of you encountered of challenge or adversity or a tough boss that you actually were able to turn into a positive?
I can jump in. I have 2 that I just came to the top of my mind. I think one thing I'll say, especially because everyone here, their students are younger, I'm a shy person. I'm very sensitive, or I think I'm still sort of sensitive. So I had to get over that sensitivity thing. I realized that it was hindering me at work. And of course, people should respect you at work. But everything that someone says to you, I had to learn how to take what someone is saying, and no matter if I liked them or not, or I thought they were a bad person or not, and filter and say, before I get emotional or whatever, does this have some validity? And really look at it a bit more objectively. And I had to do that along my career. And I remember a couple of times I got pieces of feedback where I thought it was just like, for me, I just took it so personal. And it was just really, it actually helped me to make me better, or a better whatever. But I went, it was actually the past 5 or 6 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I was overseeing an ad agent, a PR agency, communications agency, and it was great. I loved it. I loved running a business. But my heart was always into e-commerce and digital. And unfortunately, I was launching this communication agency, and it wasn't moving in the digital direction I wanted it to go in. So I had the opportunity to go to a digital first startup and loved it until the funding ran out. Now, I was there for a little over a year, and I was running a small startup. I think it was 10 people, and it was fantastic. But at this point in my career, I was well on in my career, and it's like you hear with most startups overnight. It's just one day it's on and one day it's off, right? And it was tough for me. It was so hard. But I have to say, one of the best moves I ever made. I launched e-commerce here at Versace for the US market in 2012, 2013. I went to Westville and I worked on their app that they invested a lot of money in and worked on their team. But I really wanted that digital first experience. And can I say the beauty about going to that startup, and even though it was like, oh my God, I'm here at this point in my career, I can't believe it. The beauty is all the things that I used to have, that I paid agencies for, Google Analytics and looking at Google AdWords, I had to do it myself. Everything had to come from me. And I have to say it made me a much better digital marketer and a much better e-commerce person, because now when I work with agency, I can drive and go into the details. So I did it myself. Now when I'm looking at my media buys, I did it myself. So it was hard and it was a big blow. But at the same time, it was a great, let's say it was a great blow at the end.
Nice. Amanda, Nada, any challenge that was actually one you were able to turn into a success, if you will?
Well, I'll tell you, I've had some tough bosses, and I won't get into who, but there was a particular job in my career where I had a really tough boss, and they gave me a lot of difficult feedback, and they were very hard on me, and I actually learned probably more from that job than almost any other job. And to Stacey's point earlier, some of it was digesting feedback and like understanding, taking some of the emotion out of it and understanding where they were right and what I needed to do to be better. I think it taught me to think about preparedness in conversations that I was having with my bosses or coworkers in a much different way, like really, really being overly prepared, going through, numbers, double checking things I was saying, reading up on things, so that I was very buttoned up at work. And I think that made a huge difference in my career as well. And a little bit of having, unfortunately, the ability to deliver good and bad news in a really flawless way, I think helped a lot as well. And you state the facts, you talk about whether things are good or bad, this is how it is, this is the reason why, this is this. And I think I learned that skill there, kind of taking the emotion out of a lot of the things that I was doing. So, not every job is your favorite job, but certainly I've learned a lot from some of the hardest jobs I've had.
That's great advice. Thanks. Not anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, maybe I'll just build on what Amanda said quickly. I think, feedback, I've been given lots of feedback over my career, positive and opportunities. And I think that my only takeaway and advice as I kind of read through some of the questions that the students are asking is, feedback is a gift. I know people say that and that sounds cheesy, but it is. Like if somebody is actually giving you feedback, they thought about it and they are really, giving it to you. And listening to that advice and feedback is really important, and doing something with it will show more and erase all the probably, negative feedback that occurred. Because if you actually hear it and do something, that is really impressive to whoever gave you that feedback. And so I think back, one of the toughest, feedbacks I got early in my career is I was so data driven. I was really kind of using always my science part of my brain and never the creative part. I was never a buyer, by the way. And to get to my role, never being a buyer was like, nobody ever thought that was possible. And they told me like, oh, you're just not creative enough to care about product. And I was like, well, that's not true. I know I am. And I just wasn't bringing my full self to work. And so I think it's also like listening to the feedback and deciding what you want to do with it is kind of the advice I would give, because I've been given all kinds of feedback and I look back and realize the times that I heard it but didn't do anything with it, and I'm still getting that feedback. So I should have done something with it earlier. And I would say that would be, you know, the advice I would give everybody is listen and try to do better.
Thanks for that, Nada. I'm looking at the clock here. I'm looking at the questions that have popped up. I think I'm going to pivot to what I call my rapid fire mode, which will be quick questions and succinct, quick answers to my remaining questions. And I'm going to embed in them a few of the questions that some of the viewers have asked. So for any of you, was there a course you wish you'd studied or a course of study you wish you'd pursued in college, now looking back on where you are today? Okay, the answer is no.
I think maybe the best course I took was actually, there was like a personal finance course that had nothing to do with what I do every day, but helped me kind of keep track of what I do, you know, on the backside personally. And if there's a course like that, take it, it's helpful.
Got it.
For my end, computer programming. I was a computer programming minor. That's what I started off. I was not even, I don't know why I chose it, but I did. Well, I like computers, of course, but it was great. It was great because it really helped with like logic, and me being a pretty creative person, it sort of helped balance the opposite of what Nada was saying earlier.
Got it. My next rapid fire. You guys all, I'm sure, are engaged in hiring from time to time. How do candidates set themselves apart from the competition in your estimation?
I love a candidate that's got questions, that's eager to learn, that's very engaged, and has done some homework and research on either the brand or me or other people that they're interviewing with. You know, I really believe a lot of people can be taught skills on a job, and so I'm really looking for people who are going to be a good fit within the community of the brands that I have.
Thanks. Stacy, what about you when you're interviewing a candidate?
Same thing. I look for that. I look for people who are going to problem solve and not bring any drama.
Okay, got it. We're talking to this audience, keep them in mind. How can they be their best advocates when they're looking for a promotion or a raise? What would your advice be to a younger professional about how to go about that and when?
I'll jump in.
Oh, go ahead, Stacey.
No, sorry. My thing is, I say always look at any opportunity gaps in your company. Of course, do your job well, but if you're looking, you have to go above and beyond and look for any gaps of opportunity to grow the business, to cut cost. Look at something that's not there that someone else is not doing, and do it.
Nice.
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's also like, what have you contributed and what will you contribute in the next role? Because it's, you know, partially an investment in you, but also it's an investment for the company. And so how can you contribute, and how did you make sure you did a great job in whatever you did?
Nice.
And don't be afraid. I think asking is probably like being prepared, knowing, listing those things out, but don't be afraid to ask for that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nice. Okay, my last rapid fire question of the session, and we touched on this a little bit. There have been some overarching themes about not being shy and listening to advice and heeding the guidance from mentors. What would your advice be, guys, to this audience, or to your young self, if your young self was watching today, just as your sort of parting words? Amanda, I'm going to put you on the spot for your answer to that.
Okay. You know what? I would take the opportunity to network. Network's one of the hardest things that anybody could do at any level of your career. But I would read the industry trades. I would catch up with people who work in the industry. I would go to panels and I would connect with people there and make those connections and kind of nurture them throughout your career. I think that's the best thing you can do. And you'll find that you'll meet some people over and over again in different roles, and you'll work together with them in different ways, and it can be a great experience. So I would push yourself to do that kind of hardest thing we all have to do, which is getting out there and meeting people.
Nice. Thanks, Amanda. Stacey, any advice to the young woman in the Midwest who was thinking?
Well, two things. I echo what Amanda says. I mean, again, one of my mentors, Roberto Lorenzini, he hired me years ago, and even though I sent him a book on how he should become a CEO, he's our CEO here now. And just keep those relationships up, and remember, it's a two-way thing. Keep it up, but not just keeping it when you need something. you know, we need things too, people that are like have been around for a while. I feel like I am my young self still. So let me see what I would tell, but I would probably tell myself, there's one thing I would tell myself. I always felt like I was just so blessed to be in this industry, and I am, and I love what I do and all that, but I have to also be a better self-advocate, and I wish I would have been a better self-advocate for myself a while back, and remember that, you know, with hard work, let's say my hard work and dedication and what I'm going to bring to the company, I'm giving the company something, and them having me is just as great as me having the company. And it took me a long, long time to realize that.
That's just terrific, Stacey. Thank you. Hey, Nada, I'm going to let you
Yeah.
close.
All right. Well, I would say, you know, careers are, you know, there for you to explore and to learn and to find the things that you love. So I think that patience early on, I think we get really hungry, and I know that everybody does. As I talked to talent, I was there too, and use this opportunity early in your career to explore, experiment, ask questions, network, find the things that drive you and excite you, because 30 years later, you're going to be wanting to do something you love. And so try to get exposure early on, because I think that's what makes people successful, is finding that connectivity to something that they actually love. So be patient early, be curious early, good things will happen, I promise. I think that's probably been the case for all of us, but there's no race to some kind of finish line. So
Fantastic. What was billed as a lunch break, I guess the lunch break is over. It's time to go back to work. But thank you, bosses. That was really, as I knew it would be, super thoughtful and provocative. And, you know, just you guys shared in a way that I know our audience really loved and found very meaningful. So thank you. To everybody watching, tomorrow is Mara Hoffman on her pioneering sustainability work. Hope you tune in for that. And again, thanks, Amanda, Nada, Stacey, very, very much. Lunch is over.
Thank you.
thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Elisa. Nice to meet you, Amanda, Nada. Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.